Hi, this is Lana with Psychosomatic Alchemy, and today we're covering the subject of equanimity. Before we jump into the analytical meditation, we're just going to talk a little bit about the context. Why is equanimity an important attitude to cultivate? So when we look at the people in our lives, we see that we categorize all human beings on the planet into three groups. We have, on one hand, our loved ones, people that we love and care about, people who are close to us. Then we have people that we don't know nothing about, so these are strangers. And in the other corner, we have the enemies, or perhaps enemy is a strong word, but anybody who rubs us the wrong way, who's pushing our buttons, people that we tend to compete with, and so forth. So we categorize the entire world according to our ego. What does that mean? That means that people who do for us that which we want, people who give us what we want, those people we deem as valuable and we wish them well. People who are driving us crazy, people that are our enemies, we tend to not wish them so well. And then the strangers, they don't concern us at all, so they're kind of like unimportant. We're not really, well, some of us are really not touched so much by what happens to them. So we can view from this that we categorize everything based on what we get out of people. And since this channel is about transcendence, it's about evolution, we're gonna step into Tibetan Buddhist tradition and borrow some wisdom from them to help give us context why living according to this model isn't actually helpful to us. Our inner state is dependent upon people around us, right? So we're kind of at a mercy of how somebody behaves. So like if somebody is mean, we're upset. If somebody is nice, then we're happy. That's not really stable way of living. So equanimity does a couple of things. One, it makes us more self-sufficient. So again, we don't depend on others to have some balanced, happy, strong sense of being. We become untouchable, right? Because nobody can upset us when we're really strong inside of ourselves. But when we're in that place, we can actually help out others. So for a moment, let's look at what drives us. By and large, we're human animals, and we are programmed to go after those things that give us fulfillment, aka happiness. And furthermore, we're programmed to avoid things that bring us discomfort or suffering. So this is something that we share with all sentient beings. So if we have this understanding, then when we view people's behavior and we really analyze it instead of reacting to it, we tend to have a little bit more tolerance and understanding for some mistakes people may make in how they maybe speak to us or how they conduct themselves in certain situations and so forth. So we can appreciate the fact that we're kind of all the same in this one way, which is wishing to be happy and not wishing to suffer. And basically, this is the basic premise from which we're gonna step into this practice of equanimity. I'm gonna take you through it, but I invite you to, after you sort of watch this video, to take some time and like make this practice your own and just really like think about specific people in your life and how you can transform those relationships and really transmute them, especially the toxic ones, and turn them into kind of an opportunity to grow. Not just for yourself, but for all those involved. So we start this practice by bringing to mind three people, right? Think about your loved one. Think about somebody who is driving you crazy and making, arousing feelings of anger when you think of them. And maybe if that's too hard, you can just think of somebody who's slightly annoying. So you can, do baby steps, make it easy for yourself. And then think about somebody who you don't really know very well. Maybe it's like a person at the grocery store that you see once in a blue moon. So you don't really know them, but you've seen them around. When we think of our loved ones, we note how our perception is automatically different. The filter that we look through is different when we look at the loved one than when we look at, for example, somebody who frustrates us. So the filter we use is the filter of attachment. Attachment and desire tends to color everything so that we see things in a more attractive way. We see things as kind of in a better light than how they actually exist. In the same way, the filter of aversion makes us exaggerate negative qualities. So if we have aversion for somebody, they're gonna appear as way worse than they actually are. And this really gives us a clue that we have so much to do with how we perceive the world around us, right? Viewing our beloved person will cause us to interpret their mistakes in a different way than how we would interpret mistakes of somebody we don't like. So when our loved one makes a mistake, or even when they say unkind things, we might feel bad about it, or we might even have an argument, but ultimately we go back and we forgive them. We're much easier to jump into forgiveness and tolerance with those we love than with those we don't love. So we have everything to do with what that relationship looks like, because our willingness to make things work, to cultivate positive relationship with our loved one. Now, what happens when the loved one becomes an enemy? A very quick example of that is a former lover. So somebody loved us, we love them, and then they go and like cheat on us or fall in love with somebody else. And then what happens? Love is very quickly replaced by hatred. Of course, when you dig through that hatred, you find that like what's underneath all that anger is actually like pain and vulnerability, but that's like another story. What comes out is anger and hatred. So that just goes to show that when we relate to somebody based upon our attachment or aversion alone, that's not a really stable way of relating to people, because it can change in an instant. It can change, when they kind of like something happens for them. I mean, it happened to people throughout time that they just fall out of love. Like, is that really a cause to hate them? Did that maybe ever happen to you? Maybe it didn't, but if it did, you might be able to have like a better grasp of what that's like, and you may know that that's not something you can control. Now take the loved one to the side and let's take the neutral person. Some of us who are maybe more compassionate or empathic, we might feel a great deal of care for a stranger, but there are a lot of people still out there that don't really feel much, and there are times when we just don't care about anybody, especially when we're distressed. So if it's like a stranger, we'll just like pass right next to them and like not really focus on their momentary suffering or anything like that, right? So when we look at the stranger, we're gonna think about the fact that they're actually just like us. Even though we don't know them, we know that they also have hopes and dreams and fears just like us. And in this way, we can kind of relate to them, right? We can see the ways in which we're similar, and by default, we can feel some kind of kinship and connection with them. And through this kinship, we can develop the sense of caring and compassion, so that actually our capacity to love and care will grow. And this is actually very beneficial, because loving and caring for others is a direct antidote to ego grasping. Ego grasping is that part that says, I'm the most important, what about me? The stronger the ego grasping, the more we actually suffer. That's why in Tibetan Buddhism, one of the wings for us to fly, right? There are two wings in Enlightenment. One is the wing of wisdom and the other is the wing of compassion. And they're actually two sides of the same coin, because having compassion, developing compassion is in itself aspect of wisdom, according to Tibetan Buddhism. Now let's move on to the enemy. Now, just when you visualize this person, you can maybe already feel some negative feelings coming out, but let's kind of strip that down and let's start to think about this person. Well, first of all, we analyze, why is it that we don't like them? What is it about them? Is it something they said, something overtly they communicated to us that hurt our feelings? Did they steal our boyfriend or girlfriend? So like, are we secretly competing with them? Do we feel insecure next to them? Do we feel insufficient next to them? That will definitely make us feel kind of hateful things for somebody. The thing is also, a lot of the things that we feel happen unconsciously. This is why it's really important to kind of analyze our mind and see, where is this stuff coming from? So when it comes to the enemy, we tend to think that they're inherently problematic or inherently unlikable. But when we take a closer look, we can see that, well, you know, what do you know? They have friends and family who like them, so they can't be so boring, horrible, you know, annoying. So we can like shake a little bit, you know, this very solid negative feeling that we harbor for somebody we dislike. We can start to shake it up a little bit. Further, we can think about this person as somebody who also just wants to avoid suffering, wants to be happy. With a little bit of effort, we can develop a sense of kinship with that person. And that in turn will arise some kind of compassion. So we can take that filter that we use on our loved one and we can apply it to the enemy. Try to give them a little break. We try to understand them. And when we change our attitudes towards that person, I mean, I guarantee you that your relationship with that person will change. It takes two to tango, always. The really cool thing about this contemplation is also to realize how what we perceive as, you know, reality of loved one, reality of the enemy is very unstable and it can change very easily, right? So somebody who was your dear friend today can tomorrow become your enemy. And vice versa, somebody you disagreed with in the past can maybe jump in and be like a really helpful person for you, and then you start to kind of see them in a different light. So again, it just goes down to how we perceive things, how we choose to perceive things, and we can affect how we see people and how we relate to them. And more so when we step into this capacity to be friendly to everybody. I mean, we don't have to like everybody. We don't have to be friends with everybody. That's not the point. The point is to just develop an attitude of just being able to understand why people are the way they are. When we do that, you know, and we kind of act from the place of compassion, we're more likely to kind of stay peaceful. So when somebody is doing their thing or they're kind of like freaking out at you, you don't have to get all tangled up in there. You can kind of like step back and try to understand them and then try to kind of help them out, or just remove yourself from situation, you know, without feeding your animosity and anger. I invite you to give this a shot, and if any questions come up, please let us know in the comment section and I'll do my best to respond. And I hope this is something that will bring a little bit more peace into your lives and lives of others. Thank you.